Well, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. This is Lloyd Rankin, president of the AWP Community of Practice North American chapter. We've got a different format today. This is just going to be a short half-hour session, but it ties in with the conference that we're going to be doing in London. Next slide, please, Steve. So we're fortunate today we have Jeff Smithles, and he is an expert on COP26, the need for us to get our carbon footprint reduced, the need for us to achieve this in fairly short order. So I'll have Jeff introduce himself just before the session, but we've got a little video that we think will help you understand what's going on. By the way, if you look in the handout section, you will see a number of documents that you can download after this event is over, or even while the event's going on. Steve, can you put the video up? I'll disappear for a second.
European construction projects urgently need to address climate change, technology integration, and project performance issues. Advanced work packaging is viewed by leading global owners and EPCs as the preferred methodology for tackling such challenges. AWP shortens schedule, reduces waste, improves technology integration, and offers better predictability, while reducing risk and exposure to safety hazards. It can increase European construction productivity and help to combat the climate crisis by significantly improving project efficiency on large and small projects across multiple industry sectors. The AWP Conference Europe is a live hybrid event for in-person and virtual attendees, featuring 2 days of plenaries, breakouts and keynotes with world-class subject matter experts presenting brand new research and implementation resources. Register now to see why AWP and the technologies that support and enhance it are becoming the gold standard for integrated project delivery.
So we're going to get started on the session. One thing I will say, the event is a hybrid. What that means is don't be discouraged by the time difference between here and London. The entire event is also available on demand if you attend virtually. So let's jump in. Jeff is going to be keynoting, and Jeff, I'd like it if you could just take a minute to introduce yourself to our group.
Yeah, absolutely, Lloyd. Thank you for that. And good afternoon, good morning, and whatever time it is in your time zone to everyone that's joined today. So my name is Jeff Smethles. I worked for some 30 plus years for Shell, starting in the UK, but I've worked all around the world with Shell. I spent 20 years working outside of the country, mainly in Europe and the Middle East, in Europe and Asia. Working on large projects and major maintenance activities around the globe. And then I spent quite some time working in global roles for Shell, where I headed up the Project Academy, where we trained our staff. And I also was the global discipline head for project engineering, where I directed the way that Shell executes its projects and standards. And in particular, I had the role of looking after something called efficient execution, which was really the focus on how do we get better productivity, better efficiency, and a reduction in waste in Shell's projects around the globe. So that's my background. Lloyd was very kind, saying I'm an expert in COP26. I would count myself more as a concerned citizen that's done a significant amount of research. I think my expertise is in projects, but I'm going to span the topic as we talk about it.
Great. And as the session's going on, if you have any questions for us, there's a questions feature in the tool. Please just drop your thoughts into the question or raise your hand. And when we get to the Q&A at the end of this, we'll try and address as many questions as we get. So first question for you, Jeff. Tell us a little bit about the keynote that you're going to do this year in London.
Yeah, sure. So the keynote speech is going to address what I think is going to be the huge impact of the race for zero. Now, if you haven't heard about the race for zero, that's the investment necessary to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which was the main theme in COP26. And it's the effect that it's going to have on the global project delivery system, which is where AWP comes in. I'm going to discuss how essential it's going to be to address productivity and waste. And as anyone knows who's been into AWP, has attended sessions in the past, this is really the core of what AWP is about. So I see it central to achieving this goal that we see before us.
So I know your keynote, and I know one of your key themes is collaboration. What's the relevance to AWP?
Yeah, good question. It's always the why now on collaboration and why we're emphasizing it so much. And I even see that picked up in the videos that you've put together. And I do think it's hugely important. I believe, as we go for the race for zero, as I say, with this huge investment over the next 30 years, it's going to put tremendous strain on the global project delivery system and in every aspect of that. And that's a challenge, but also an opportunity. I've worked before delivering projects when there's been high demand and limited supply. And what it creates is it creates a drive for a commercial environment where you can have collaborative relationships. And I mean collaborative relationships up and down the supply chain. So between owners and contractors and technology providers. Not only do I believe that we can have a collaborative relationship, but I also think that it's absolutely necessary that those collaborations are forged. If we look at AWP and how effective it is, currently I think it's a lack of collaboration because of the way that we tend to contract, which leads to a lack of transparency between the parties, particularly in terms of performance. We get a misalignment of incentives and, of course, an unwillingness to embrace technology at pace, which is, fairly typical in the construction industry and something that we need to break down. And I think that's really what's holding back on realizing the true potential of AWP and its impact on project outcomes.
Okay. I know that after your keynote, you're going to be part of a breakout session on, I believe the title is Collaboration to Apply Agile Technology at Pace. And I believe that's sort of an extension of what you're going to be doing in your keynote. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this really goes back to what I was doing in my last years with Shell, where I was looking at how do we improve the efficiency of execution. And in that time, I headed an initiative called Future of Construction. And what we did there is we were looking, rather than waiting for technology to be pushed at us, we said, look, let's look at it the other way around. Let's look at what is going to be the power of defining the key construction challenges with our experts in the organization, and then bringing together agile technology providers to provide solutions to the problems as we define them. So setting the impetus for this and incubating that growth and that work. And that means that the solutions, we can be then confident, are actually going to deliver project outcomes, because I saw a lot of technology being applied that impressed people, but did it really affect the bottom line? Did it really improve productivity in our projects? And oftentimes that was ambiguous at best. In the breakout session in London, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce 3 agile technology providers that I had engagements with while I was working with Shell, and I've continued relationships with since leaving Shell. And these 3 agile technology providers are working in the construction industry, are actually choosing to collaborate between themselves, because they found that each of them has unique attributes that makes them special in what they can deliver and how they can tackle issues related to AWP. But collectively, they believe in their collaboration that they will be much more than the sum of their parts, and that they can really deeply address the issues that face us from achieving productivity and avoiding waste. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that collaboration and talk about what their intentions are. And what I've also done in that breakout session is I've invited panelists from some large owner organizations to come along and to listen to the arguments and then to give their feedback. You know, do we think that they're tackling the right thing? Do we feel that collaboration is necessary? What are going to be the gaps and problems in terms of being able to implement this and embrace it from an owner perspective, working with contractors? Because I think that's the issue that we tend to wrestle with. How do we get these highly innovative, collaborative organizations actually to be utilized on our projects? So I want this to be challenging and really making people think about this issue a bit more deeply than perhaps we do at the moment, because I think this is a key enabler to get a deeper application of AWP
That's
and
great.
really driving project outcomes.
Perfect. Well, I see we've got a number of old friends on the line and some new folks as well. This is your opportunity to get a chance to ask Jeff some questions. And for this year, we're focusing on a much more strategic approach to advanced work packaging. We're tackling some huge problems, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So can I get some questions from the audience? I see we've got John Fish, who's in North America. He is kind of the godfather of project delivery. So I'm wondering, John, do you have a question you could put through, or Luigi, do you have one you could send? Maxim, I see you've got your hand raised. Could you throw a question into the chat for us? And Stuart Young is there. Somebody else. Oh, and Andrew, all the way from Australia. You're here as well. Would you like to throw a question into the chat for us?
Maxim, if it's easier, you can use your mic to ask the question as well.
Okay, have you turned him on?
Yeah, he can use his mic if he chooses. And same, if anybody wants to speak, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can speak with Lloyd and Jeff here.
Okay, not hearing from Maxim. So while we're waiting for some questions, one of the big issues, I think, is from a project standpoint, how busy are we going to be between now and 2050 to try and address net zero emissions by 2050? Is that, 5-10% increase in our projects, or is it going to be more than that?
I think it's going to be a lot more than that, Lloyd. I'll save it for the keynote to take you through where I have evidence for that and what that's going to be. But I think when we think about climate change, we tend to think about what we see on the television and what we read in newspapers, what we see in social media, which tends to be the political world talking about, have we agreed to something, what the targets are. But I don't think we've really thought about or appreciated what that means to project delivery to achieve this. And certainly when I talk to old colleagues in Shell and other major organizations, they really are mobilizing on this. The amount of capital that is getting pushed into renewables and the transition from hydrocarbon into renewables is just tremendous, and people are busier than ever, and it's picking up all the time. So you can imagine that you know, we've struggled really to improve our productivity and stay on top, even with the demand as it stands today. If that's going to get significantly more, and I absolutely believe that it is, then we really have no choice but to really fully embed processes like AWP, and it's not the only thing, but AWP is key for me in terms of tackling the productivity issue in order to deliver this. You know, so I think it's essential.
Great. We have a question that's come in on how we're going to do this. So, sorry, I'm just trying to resize so I can see it. On collaboration, how do you merge and align different digital platforms from involved stakeholders? Have you had a digital plan in place? I think that sounds like your keynote or your breakout, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we usually get into the technical issue here of how do you integrate items, and you know, I'll be bringing technical experts along that will talk to you all day about that and what that means. I'm a project guy. I'm not a software guy. But you're right, it's a challenge. But I think sometimes we can get overly obsessed on that in terms of, you know, well, all these different suppliers, maybe it'd be better if I go for one and it's all integrated. Ultimately, what I'm looking at and my focus is, what is the project outcome? What is the problem of delivering that project outcome? And are we tackling it by the use of the software? And what do we need to integrate to make that happen? Because the technical solutions can be overcome. That's just engineering. I think it's understanding, are you actually going to affect the bottom line is my real interest here. I also see a lot of the technology and the integration has really been focused on the engineering space. You know, we talk about, you know, how do we manage the engineering? How do we build the, you know, the models in which we can then engineer this this whole project? But the construction space tends to lag behind that and not take that technology on board. And I think there's so much opportunity here from using, you know, advanced analytics to drive expert systems, to the use of big data in terms of using artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of which is being used in many parts of industry, and yet we don't see it in the construction space. And there are companies out there that are developing exciting and really effective solutions. And I think, particularly as owners, I'm talking as an ex-owner project manager, I think we can influence that. We can nurture these capabilities to deliver, as opposed to where we often find ourselves is kind of sitting back and saying, well, have you done it on at least 14 projects, and has it been improved, and I'll take a look at it once you've done that. Well, yeah, I think that's fine as an attitude thinking about your individual project, but if we think about ourselves as an industry, how do we move forward? We need to provide a more collaborative and more innovative approach in order to move forward and meet the challenges that we face.
Great. I'd asked John if he could give us a question, and unfortunately his mic's not working, but he did put a question into the question feature. He said that in North America, they're finding that most of the owner requirements are still focused on cost, and that in order to address this, we also have to look at the supply chain and how to be more effective. We've got to look at smart contracts. And I think, you know, while that's more of a comment, I think the question is, he's asking as an EPC representative is, how do we get the owners to see that this is something that they should be using to assess their projects and look at how they do their contracting and so on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it depends on what the aspiration of the owner is. I've sat in an owner organization for long times, and I hear what he's saying, particularly from a business perspective. Quite often, there's a lack of understanding about what drives projects and the outcomes on projects. People have tremendous faith that as long as I put a package together and bid it in the market, I will automatically get the lowest price, and that's the best that I can get. Well, I can tell them from long experience, say, 3 bids and a buy gets you a starting price. And depending on what's happening in the marketplace, that could be a good price or it could be a very bad price. And the more demand that's out there on what is a shrinking EPC capability, quite frankly, because of lack of investment, because through downtimes, there's been a lot of consolidation in the industry, a lot of a lack of investment in people. Demographics have gone against us. So as the demand grows, we're going to struggle to keep up with this. And if you think you're going to do that on a competitive basis, driving for lowest cost, I think we're deluding ourselves. Now, this is not about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, of course, we want to be efficient in what we do. But if you're efficient and you're delivering on schedule, because that's what it's going to take, it's about delivering at speed here when you look at trying to deliver net zero by 2050. If you're efficient in what you do and you deliver faster, guess what? You do it for a lower price. So I think there's more money to be saved through collaboration and focusing on processes like this than you will ever get out of a bid cycle in your projects. And if we can get past that with owners, then I think the ability to collaborate in the front end, to embed these kind of processes will work. And I'm going to talk about this in a lot more detail in the keynote speech, because I've seen this for so many years, and anyone who knows the inside of projects would understand what I'm talking about.
Thanks for that. We've got a question from Roberto, and I think this may require both of us to answer it fully. He's in South America, and he's asking the question, are there plans to expand to the Latin American market, especially in the mining sector? Now, we're having discussions about putting on a conference next year in South America, probably Brazil, in English and Spanish. But I think he's also asking a broader question, which is, we're talking about Europe. This is not a European problem. This is not a North American problem. This is a global problem, and it's going to require global solutions. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, no, 100%. This is everybody's problem. And it will take a global effort from every country around the world. I think that this will accelerate. People are starting to see that they need to move faster at this. Certainly when I talk to companies, I mean, remember in my days in Shell, when Shell were looking at scenarios of what happens with this energy transition, and all their scenarios came out with the same answer: go through it faster. The faster you get through this, the better the outcome, both for the planet, but also for your business. So the two things are not in conflict. So I think we will see that a lot more. Just looking, you mentioned South America. Bizarrely, I've worked in many, many countries all around the world in all sorts of continents, and the one continent I haven't visited is South America. So please have a CII conference in South America. I'd love to join you.
Great. So there was just following up on what you said, one of the questions that we've got is, please speak to the value of speed, reducing the cycle time from project to making product. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk more about this in the keynote, but basically, yes, I think speed will be the issue. Over the next 30 years, as we try to deliver this, speed is going to be of the essence. It's not a long time to deliver the sheer volume of change that we need to put in place in terms of capital projects. And I've often heard people talk about improving schedule, and usually the way that happens on projects is people say, well, okay, we'll set a target and we'll set an aggressive schedule target. And then they don't do anything different. They just assume that people will paddle harder and somehow will magically deliver better schedule. Well, I can tell you that particularly on larger, more complex projects, if you compress the schedule and expect a better outcome, you'll be almost always disappointed. There are too many critical paths on that project for that to happen. You just cannot close it down. And what generally happens is not only does it go late, but it goes much later. And that's particularly true in the oil and gas world. So you can't hit and hope here. We have to embed real processes that change the way that we work in order to deliver an improved schedule. So that's why I'm passionate about engaging in AWP and driving AWP much deeper into our project. I think we can achieve a lot more than we are doing today. But you're right, the value of that, if you've got shorter schedules that are done efficiently, the costs will take care of themselves. Generally, it means you can look after the environment, you can look after safety, because they are all related, and everyone knows that on a project. So yes, focus on schedule is going to be what we need to do, and it makes both sense for the environment and for the business.
So another question for you, Jeff. Can you tell us what sort of activities we can expect in order to meet these challenges that you've described? It sounds like the targets are very ambitious. What do we need to do from an owner's position and from an EPC position to tackle this?
So first of all, we need to get over our hurdle of, should we adopt these new ways of working, yes or no? I'm constantly hearing people saying, well, you know what, maybe I should do a trial. Maybe we should see whether this is effective on what we're doing. Now, a trial on a major project is going to take you 3 to 6 years to deliver. So if you start doing a trial, guess what? You'll see the outcome in 3 to 6 years from now. Well, the news I've got for everyone from a climate change and energy transition perspective, you haven't got that luxury. You need to start improving right now. And we know AWP delivers. So I think we need to get over that. I also think we need to actually set much more ambitious targets. And I've seen this through the application of efficient execution in Shell. We stopped going for the generic targets and we started saying what's possible, really analyzing our projects and saying what's possible and then going for it. Coupled, of course, with a supportive management organization that would encourage people to go after big targets and not punish the innocent when they weren't achieved, because you want to see that you're stretching and relieving. You need to support people in that. So there's got to have the right management environment to support it. I think a lot of what I talked about before in terms of collaboration between owners and contractors needs to come. I think the commercial environment will lend itself to opening up that possibility, but we need to grasp it. We need to bring the EPCs, the contractors, into our projects much earlier in the front end. We then need to be talking about, having collaboration. We understand what our data standards are. What are we trying to achieve? What is the performance we're jointly going to go for? And how do we share risk and reward in that so that both parties are kept whole in that process? So I think that whole collaboration, smarter contract piece all has to come. But I think this will actually help. I think this drive for 2050 will help in that. And then lastly, we need to adopt technology to get this deeper. We're still cavemen out there wandering around with sheets of paper on construction sites. It's embarrassing. We need to get out there and recognize that we're in a digital age. I'm even beyond having iPads. It should be that we are using the capability of big data, of the Internet of Things, in terms of how do we connect physical activities to the digital data collection that allows us to take quick decisions and is our eyes and ears into the project, into managing opportunities. All of that is out there at the moment being developed. We can't afford to wait around until it just lands in our lap. Get out there, find out about it, embrace it, and bring it into your projects. Many projects that I work with are doing that, and they're having great success but they've got the bravery to actually say, come on then, let's take this on. Let's bring it in and make it happen and work with the technology providers to deliver it. So I think it's, again, back down to that whole collaboration piece in order to achieve better outcomes.
So as is usually the case with a really good session, we have questions that we won't be able to answer, but I'll forward those to you, Jeff, and potentially you can get back to us with some responses. I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And I want to thank the attendees for the great questions that they came up with. We've recorded this session. We'll make it available afterwards. Please share it with your friends. If you have any questions about the conference, please reach out to myself and I'll be happy to answer them. But I think you can see that Jeff's very passionate about this topic, and I think we absolutely got the right person in to be our keynote. He's going to be working with Jamie Johnson from Bryden Woods on the keynote. So we're going to get a couple of different perspectives, but incredibly aligned. So thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks to all you attendees, and look forward to talking to you in the near future.
My
Bye
pleasure,
now.
Lloyd. Bye.